room was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a cold, unfeeling glow on the scene unfolding below. Officer Grayson stood with a pair of electric clippers in his hand, his face a mask of indifference as he loomed over the young girl seated in the metal chair. Her name was Amara, a 16-year-old with wide, fearful eyes that darted around the room, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Her dark, curly hair, a crown she wore with pride, was about to be taken from her. Grayson's lips curled into a smirk as he flicked the clippers on, the sharp buzz cutting through the silence like a knife. "You think you're tough, huh?" he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Let's see how tough you look without this." Amara's heart pounded in her chest, her hands gripping the edges of the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but she knew it was useless. Grayson was a man who thrived on power, on control, and he had all of it in this moment. The first lock of her hair fell to the floor, and Amara felt a tear slide down her cheek. It wasn't just hair. It was her identity, her pride, her connection to her ancestors. And Grayson knew that. He knew exactly what he was doing. But what he didn't know was who was watching. Outside the precinct, a black SUV pulled up with a screech, the tire skidding to a halt. The doors flew open, and out stepped a man who commanded attention without even trying. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that seemed to make the very ground tremble beneath his feet. His name was Marcus Kane, and he was a man who had spent his life building an empire from nothing. He was a self-made billionaire, a philanthropist, and a force to be reckoned with. But above all, he was Amara's father. Marcus's face was a storm of emotions as he strode toward the precinct doors, his eyes blazing with a fury that could melt steel. He had received the call just minutes ago, a frantic, tearful message from his daughter, begging for help. And now, as he pushed through the doors, his heart pounded with a mix of fear and rage. He would not let this stand. He would not let anyone hurt his little girl. Inside, Grayson was halfway through his cruel act, the floor around Amara's chair littered with curls. He was so focused on his task, so consumed by his own sense of power, that he didn't notice the commotion brewing outside the room. The door burst open with a force that made the walls shake, and Marcus stepped inside, his eyes immediately locking onto his daughter. The sight of her, trembling and humiliated, sent a wave of white-hot anger through him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Marcus's voice boomed, echoing through the room like thunder. Grayson froze, the clippers slipping from his hand and clattering to the floor. He turned slowly, his face paling as he realized who stood before him. "Mr. Kane," he stammered, his voice trembling. I didn't know she was your daughter. I swear I didn't know." Marcus took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You didn't know?" he repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "Does it matter whose daughter she is? Does that give you the right to do this to her?" Grayson opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He was trapped, caught in the crosshairs of a man who had the power to destroy him with a single word. Marcus turned his attention to Amara, his heart breaking as he saw the fear and pain in her eyes. He knelt beside her, his hands gentle as he cupped her face. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." Amara nodded, her tears flowing freely as she leaned into her father's embrace. Marcus stood, his protective instincts kicking into overdrive. He turned back to Grayson, his expression hardening. "You're going to regret this," he said, his voice cold and steady. "You're going to regret every single thing you've done to my daughter." Grayson swallowed hard, his mind racing as he tried to think of a way out. But there was none. Marcus Kane was not a man to be trifled with, and Grayson knew he had made the biggest mistake of his life. As Marcus led Amara out of the room, his mind was already working, plotting the next steps. He would make sure Grayson paid for what he had done, not just to his daughter, but to every other person he had ever hurt. He would use his wealth, his influence, and his connections to bring the man to his knees. But more than that, he would make sure Amara knew she was loved, that she was safe, and that no one would ever hurt her again. The ride home was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the SUV's engine. Amara sat in the back seat, her head resting against the window as she stared out at the passing city lights. Marcus glanced at her through the rearview mirror, his heart aching for his little girl. He knew this would leave a scar, but he also knew she was strong. She had his blood running through her veins, and that meant she was a fighter. When they arrived home, Marcus helped Amara inside, his arm around her shoulders as they walked through the grand foyer of their mansion. He led her to the living room, where fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a warm, comforting glow. He sat her down on the couch, wrapping a blanket around her before sitting beside her. "Amara," he began, his voice soft but firm, "I need you to know something. What happened tonight, it wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve that. No one does." Amara nodded, her eyes downcast as she played with the edge of the blanket. "I know," she whispered, "but it still hurts." Marcus reached out, gently tilting her chin up, so she was looking at him. "I know it does, baby. And it's okay to hurt. But you're not alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this together, okay?" Amara managed a small smile, and for the first time that night, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. He knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was ready to walk it with her, every step of the way. As the night wore on, Marcus couldn't shake the anger that still burned inside him. He knew he couldn't let Grayson get away with what he had done. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and utterly ruthless. "Marcus," the voice said. "It's been a while. What do you need?" Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing as he stared into the fire. "I need you to dig up everything you can on a cop named Grayson. I want his entire life laid bare. Every mistake, every secret, every dirty deed. I want him destroyed." There was a pause on the other end, and then the voice replied, "Consider it done." Marcus hung up, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over him. Grayson had made a grave mistake, and now he would pay the price. But for Marcus, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice for his daughter, and for every other person who had ever been wronged by someone like Grayson. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus threw himself into the task of dismantling Grayson's life, using every resource at his disposal to ensure the man would never hurt anyone again. He hired the best lawyers, the most skilled investigators, and even called in favors from some of the most powerful people in the city. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. Grayson's past was filled with corruption, abuse of power, and countless other crimes that had been swept under the rug for years. But now, thanks to Marcus, all of it was coming to light. The media caught wind of the story, and soon Grayson's face was plastered across every news outlet in the city. The public outcry was immediate and overwhelming, with people demanding justice for the countless victims of his cruelty. Meanwhile, Amara was slowly beginning to heal. With her father's unwavering support, she started to find her strength again. She attended therapy sessions, joined a support group for victims of police brutality, and even began to speak out about her experience. Her voice, once trembling and unsure, grew stronger with each passing day. She knew she had a long way to go, but she also knew she wasn't alone. Her father was by her side, and together, they were a force to be reckoned with. As the weeks turned into months, the case against Grayson grew stronger. The evidence was overwhelming, and it seemed like there was no way he could escape justice. But Marcus knew better than to underestimate his enemy. Grayson was a desperate man, and desperate men often did desperate things. Marcus made sure to keep a close eye on his daughter, hiring a team of bodyguards to ensure her safety. He wasn't taking any chances, not when it came to Amara. The trial was set to begin in just a few weeks, and Marcus was determined to see it through to the end. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Grayson still had allies in high places, and there were those who would do anything to protect him. But Marcus was ready. He had spent his entire life fighting for what he believed in, and this was no different. He would see Grayson brought to justice, no matter what it took. As he sat in his office one evening, going over the final details of the case, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not just in the work he had done, but in his daughter. Amara had been through so much, and yet she had emerged stronger, braver, and more determined than ever. She was a fighter, just like him, and together, They would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road to justice was long and difficult, but Marcus knew they would walk it together, side by side, until the very end. And when that day came, when Grayson finally faced the consequences of his actions, Marcus would be there, standing tall, knowing he had done everything in his power to protect his daughter and ensure that justice was served. The night before the trial was set to begin, the city felt unusually still, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation. Marcus sat in his study, the dim glow of his desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. The walls were lined with bookshelves, filled with volumes on law, business, and history, titles he had collected over the years, each one a testament to his relentless pursuit of knowledge and power. But tonight, his mind was far from the books. It was on Grayson. The man had been unusually quiet in the days leading up to the trial, and that silence unnerved Marcus. He knew Grayson wasn't the type to go down without a fight. There was something brewing, something dark and dangerous, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were all walking into a trap. Amara was upstairs, asleep in her room. Marcus had checked on her twice already, making sure the security system was armed and the bodyguards stationed outside were alert. He had spared no expense in protecting her, but still, the unease lingered. He picked up his phone, scrolling through the messages from his team. Everything was in place. The evidence was airtight. The witnesses were ready to testify. And yet, the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach refused to go away. He stood, pacing the room, his mind racing. What was he missing? What was Grayson planning? The sound of his phone buzzing snapped him out of his thoughts. It was a text from one of his investigators. "We've got a problem. Grayson's gone." Marcus's blood ran cold. He stared at the message, his fingers tightening around the phone. Gone? How? He quickly dialed the investigator's number, his voice sharp and urgent. "What do you mean he's gone? Where is he?" The investigator's voice was tense, hurried. "We don't know. He was supposed to be under house arrest, but he slipped past the guards. We're tracking him now, but he's got a head start." Marcus's mind raced. Grayson was desperate, and desperate men were unpredictable. He could be anywhere, doing anything. And if he was willing to risk everything to escape, there was no telling what he might do next. Marcus hung up the phone, his heart pounding. He needed to act fast. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, but before he could leave, he heard a noise upstairs, a faint creak, like a floorboard shifting under weight. He froze, his instincts screaming at him. Something was wrong. He moved silently, his hand reaching for the gun he kept in the drawer of his desk. He crept up the stairs, his senses on high alert. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural. As he reached the top of the stairs, he saw it. The door to Amara's room was slightly ajar. His heart stopped. He rushed forward, pushing the door open, his gun raised. The room was empty. The bed was untouched, the window wide open, the curtains fluttering in the night breeze. "Amara!" Marcus shouted, his voice echoing through the house. He ran to the window, looking out into the darkness. There was no sign of her, no sign of anyone. But on the windowsill, he saw something. A single black glove, the kind Grayson always wore. Marcus's blood boiled. He knew exactly who had taken her. He pulled out his phone, his hands trembling with rage as he dialed his security team. "Amara's gone. Grayson has her. I want every available resource on this. Now." He didn't wait for a response. He was already running down the stairs, his mind racing with 1,000 scenarios, each one worse than the last. Grayson had crossed a line, and Marcus was going to make him regret it. The city was a maze of shadows and light as Marcus sped through the streets, his car weaving in and out of traffic. His phone buzzed constantly with updates from his team, but none of them brought him any closer to finding Amara. Grayson had vanished, and with him, any trace of where he might have taken her. Marcus's mind was a whirlwind of fear and anger, but he forced himself to stay focused. He couldn't afford to lose control, not now. Not when Amara's life was on the line. Hours passed, the night stretching on with no sign of Grayson or Amara. Marcus's team worked tirelessly, tracking every lead, every possible connection Grayson might have had. But the man was a ghost, slipping through their fingers at every turn. Marcus felt the weight of every passing minute, the fear gnawing at him like a beast. He couldn't lose her. He couldn't. Just as the first light of dawn began to break through the sky, Marcus's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered immediately, his voice low and dangerous. "Where is she?" There was a pause, and then Grayson's voice came through, cold and mocking. "You're too late, Kane. You'll never find her in time." Marcus's grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles white. "If you hurt her, I swear I'll—" Grayson cut him off with a laugh. "You'll what? You're not the one in control here. I am. And if you want to see your precious daughter again, you'll do exactly as I say." Marcus's mind raced. He couldn't give in to Grayson's demands, but he also couldn't risk Amara's life. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. Before he could respond, the line went dead. Marcus slammed his fist against the steering wheel, his frustration boiling over. But he couldn't afford to lose focus. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to think. Grayson was playing a dangerous game, but he had made one mistake. He had underestimated Marcus Kane, and that was a mistake he would pay for dearly. Marcus pulled over, his mind working furiously. He needed to find Grayson's weakness, something he could use against him. And then it hit him, Grayson's family. The man had a wife and a young son, living in a quiet suburb outside the city. Marcus had made it a point to learn everything about Grayson, and now that knowledge might be the key to saving Amara. He dialed another number, his voice calm but firm. "I need you to find Grayson's family. Bring them in. Quietly." There was a pause on the other end, and then a simple, "Understood." As Marcus waited for the next update, he felt a cold determination settle over him. Grayson had taken everything from him, but Marcus wasn't going to let him win. He would find Amara, no matter what it took. And when he did, Grayson would regret the day he ever crossed Marcus Kane. The game had changed, and Marcus was ready to play. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was his resolve. This wasn't just about justice anymore. This was personal, and Marcus was going to make sure Grayson paid for every single thing he had done. The hunt was on, and Marcus wouldn't stop until Amara was safe and Grayson was destroyed. The city might have been sleeping, but Marcus Kane was wide awake, and he was coming for his daughter. Nothing would stand in his way. Nothing. The city was a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, and Marcus Kane was threading through its veins like a predator on the hunt. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale, sickly light over the skyline, but Marcus hadn't slept. His mind was a storm of calculations, strategies, and raw, unrelenting fear for Amara. Grayson had taken her, and every second that passed felt like a knife twisting deeper into his chest. But Marcus wasn't a man who broke under pressure. He thrived in it. And now, with his daughter's life hanging in the balance, he was more dangerous than ever. The call from his team came just as he was about to lose his patience. "We've got Grayson's family," the voice on the other end said, calm but urgent. "They're at the safe house. What do you want us to do with them?" Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't like involving innocents, but Grayson had left him no choice. "Keep them there. Don't hurt them, but make sure they can't contact anyone. I'll handle the rest." He hung up, his mind already racing ahead. Grayson had a weakness, and Marcus was about to exploit it. He pulled out his phone again, this time dialing a number he hadn't used in years. It was a direct line to a man who operated in the shadows, a man who could find anyone, anywhere, no matter how well they thought they were hidden. The phone rang twice before it was picked up. "Marcus," the voice on the other end said, smooth and unhurried. "It's been a while. What do you need?" Marcus didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need you to find someone. A cop named Grayson. He's taken my daughter, and I need her back. Now." There was a pause, and then the voice replied, "Consider it done. I'll be in touch." The line went dead, and Marcus felt a flicker of hope. If anyone could find Grayson, it was this man. But Marcus wasn't the type to sit around and wait. He had his own leads to follow. Grayson had connections, dirty cops, corrupt politicians, and underworld figures who owed him favors. Marcus started making calls, pulling in every favor he had, calling in every debt. He needed information, and he needed it fast. The city was waking up, but for Marcus, the day had already begun. He was a man on a mission, and nothing was going to stop him. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, Amara was waking up in a cold, dark room. Her head throbbed, and her mouth felt dry. She tried to move, but her hands were tied behind her back, the rough rope cutting into her wrists. Panic surged through her as the memories came flooding back. Grayson, the clippers, the look of pure hatred in his eyes as he shaved her head. She had fought him, but he was too strong. And now, she was here, wherever here was. The room was small, with no windows and only a single dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The air was damp and smelled of mildew. Amara's heart raced as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. She had to get out of here. She had to find a way to escape. The sound of a door creaking open made her freeze. She held her breath, her eyes darting toward the sound. Grayson stepped into the room, his face twisted into a cruel smile. Well, look who's awake," he said, his voice dripping with malice. Amara glared at him, her fear momentarily overshadowed by anger. "Let me go," she demanded, her voice shaking but defiant. Grayson chuckled, a low, menacing sound that sent chills down her spine. "Oh, I don't think so, Princess. You're my insurance policy. As long as I have you, your daddy won't do anything stupid. And trust me, he's already made enough mistakes." Amara's mind raced. She had to keep him talking, buy herself some time. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steadier now. Grayson's smile widened. "What do I want? I want your father to suffer. I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything. And you, my dear, are the key to making that happen." He leaned in closer, his breath hot against her face. "But don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you. Not yet, anyway. I need you alive for now." He straightened up, his smile fading as he turned to leave. "Get comfortable, Princess. You're going to be here for a while." As the door slammed shut behind him, Amara felt a surge of desperation. She couldn't just sit here and wait for her father to rescue her. She had to do something. She looked around the room, searching for anything she could use to free herself. The room was bare, with nothing but a rusty metal chair in the corner. She wriggled her hands, trying to loosen the ropes, but they were tied too tightly. She needed another plan. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Amara couldn't tell. The room was a void, swallowing time and hope. But then she heard it, a faint scratching sound, like something moving against the wall. She held her breath, listening intently. The sound grew louder, closer. And then a small section of the wall near the floor shifted, and a pair of eyes peered through the gap. Amara's heart leapt. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The eyes blinked, and then a voice replied, soft and urgent. "Shoo, keep your voice down. I'm here to help." The section of the wall was pushed aside, revealing a narrow crawl space. A figure emerged, small and wiry, with a face that was all sharp angles and intense eyes. He moved quickly, his movements silent and precise. "Name's Dex," he said as he approached her. "Your dad sent me." Amara felt a surge of relief, but it was quickly tempered by fear. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Dex nodded as he worked on the ropes, binding her hands. "He's fine, but we need to get you out of here before Grayson comes back." The ropes fell away, and Amara rubbed her wrists, wincing at the raw skin. "How did you find me?" she asked as Dex helped her to her feet. He grinned, a quick flash of teeth in the dim light. "Let's just say I'm good at finding people. Now come on. We don't have much time." They moved quickly, Dex leading the way through the crawl space and into a narrow tunnel that ran beneath the building. The air was thick with the smell of dirt and decay, and the walls were slick with moisture. Amara followed close behind, her heart pounding as they navigated the maze of tunnels. She had no idea where they were going, but she trusted Dex. He was her only hope. Above them, the building was silent, but the tension was palpable. Grayson was somewhere in the shadows, waiting, watching. He knew Marcus would come for his daughter, and he was ready. But what he didn't know was that Marcus had already set his plan in motion. The game was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. The city was a battlefield, and Marcus Kane was about to show Grayson what it meant to cross him. The hunt was on, and nothing would stop Marcus until Amara was safe and Grayson was destroyed. The night was far from over, and the final showdown was just beginning.